This podcast is brought to you by eHarmony, the dating app to find someone you can be yourself with. Why doesn't eHarmony allow copy and paste in first messages? Because you are unique, and your conversations should reflect that. eHarmony wants you to find someone who will get you. How are you going to know who gets you if people send you the same generic conversation starters they message everyone else? Conversations that actually help you get to know each other. Imagine that. Get who gets you on eHarmony. Sign up today.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
And each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Sharai Bohannon. She's the co-host of the Nightmare on Fear Street podcast and a staff writer for Dread Central. She's also a playwright. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. This is fun.
We're so excited to have you and to talk about this really great movie. But before we do get to that, let's take it back to the start. How did you get introduced to horror?
So as a kid, I was number 6 of 8, and I originally had 5 older brothers. The youngest of the oldest group is 11 years older than me. And so they could, right? And they could watch horror movies and I couldn't. But as a child, I was like, is this because I'm a girl? Because some of it was. To be fair, my parents were sexist. I don't know how much this argument was influenced by that, but I took it upon myself to watch horror movies for feminism. And so...
Hell yeah!
Hell yeah! I don't think you were a little kid like, I'm doing this for fucking feminism.
Right.
Yeah, I'm 8 years old, but I know what this is, assholes.
It's like,
That's
I can't watch this, I'm a girl and you're messed up, Leona. And so, like, I eventually wore her down and she was like, fine, watch the fucking horror movies. Don't come having nightmares and talking to me about it. And so I started staying up on Halloweens to watch the Halloween marathons with my brothers. And then I started watching more than my brothers because they were adults and had lives. And I was like, I'm at home all day. And so they started coming to me for recommendations and it was just a good time. Yeah, it was also fun because I had really fun imaginary friends as a child. Because
Did you?
Of it. Oh, yes.
Tell me more.
Tell us more.
So my first imaginary friend that I remember was Freddy Krueger. I got rid of him because he talked too much, and I traded him out for Michael Myers. I'm sorry. Even as a child, I was like, I should not be second in my imagination. I need a less overwhelming partner.
I mean, to be fair, Freddy Krueger, by the way, Mary Beth has died, but if Freddy Krueger was someone's imaginary friend, you would not be able to get a word in edgewise. He is a catty motherfucker.
Listen.
He is a catty motherfucker.
And I couldn't go to sleep to escape him, and so I was feeling smothered. And so
I just a little side note on that: the fact that your first imaginary, or that you remember imaginary friend, was a child murderer.
You gotta cut out those toxic friendships. Even if they're imaginary, you gotta cut out the toxic friendships.
I don't think he has your best interest at mind, Sharai.
I don't either, and I'm glad I got rid of him when I did. I love him, but like it just was not gonna work out. I had to see other monsters.
It's not you, it's me.
This is the best conversation I've ever had in my entire life.
I was definitely a weird little kid who liked the horror movies. I could not say freckles, so I would say Chucky had freckles. And instead of getting me speech path, we just brought me into the room so we could all laugh about it together. how you raise a kid. I'm like, why are they laughing when I say freckles? So yeah, lots of fun times when you watch horror movies before you can legitimately read.
So I gotta also say though that Michael Myers is kind of an inspired second one, because you won't play second fiddle to him because he don't talk.
Right? He's a really good listener. Like he, little known fact, Evil didn't have to die tonight. We could have just talked to him.
I can't do this. Wait, Sharai, how old were you when you had these imaginary friends?
It was definitely around kindergarten because, like, after second grade, I was homeschooled, and so things only got worse. But before that,
I was gonna say, oh no, you have a couple more imaginary friends than being homeschooled,
right? They were like, "What can we do for the weird kid? Homeschool her. That'll normalize her." And so, like, it definitely was before kindergarten or around kindergarten, because it was before I could, like, legitimately put together sentences, even though I was trying, because I was writing back then, supposedly.
Oh, wow. Okay, so then that leads me to the next question is, so what was your first horror movie, and how old were you when you saw your first horror movie? Do you remember?
I don't know what the first one was. I remember loving Pumpkinhead. I remember loving Michael. Okay. I even loved Jason back then because I was like, any horror movie's a goal. And then I'm like, certain Friday the 13th are good, but quality control is not a thing there. Yeah, no, all of them were just always around. I don't even think I could pinpoint like what it might have been and what it could have been that first year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so it was your brothers who were watching them, not your parents?
My mother and my brothers, because my mother was one of those, as you might know, my mother is not, like, the most reliable parent, and so, like, she had a slight hoarding problem, and would just, like, record things and collect the VHSs, which she might still have, even though VCRs died a long time ago. But, like, she would just be up all night with USA, watching shit till she passed out on the couch, and I'd be like, did you see that? And she'd be unconscious. I'm like, I saw it. Chucky just choked a kid. And so, like, Tales from the Crypt was like my fun show.
Love that is. Well, it's fun. It is a fun show. It has a comedic bent to it, a darkly comedic bent, but a comedic bent.
Like, I've never unpacked it, but I think it might be why I cackle instead of laughing when something's really funny. I've never unpacked it, and I don't want to.
Wait, and said you're the sixth of 8. You said
I was originally 6 of 8. Yeah, 5 older brothers, a little sister, and a little brother, and so of course my little sister. You guys are
just kind of left to the wolves, and you're like, whatever, we don't care. You're like at the tail end of the kids. So after
the first 5, you're like, we make the mistakes we make. Like, let's go with God.
Go with God.
Yeah, it's like they turned out fine-ish. They'll figure it out. And so yeah, like I would just drag my little sister who would actually have nightmares because she couldn't just like befriend the monsters. She's a Virgo, and so. And so, like, that's what I would do, just watch horror movies so I passed out, and then I would wake up and do it over.
So did you get scared as a kid watching horror movies?
I liked being scared by the movies, but also it got hard to scare me, because, like, after you see a couple hundred, you're like, well, he's coming out of that closet, good luck to you. And so, and so it got hard, which is why, to this day, if a movie gives me a jump, I'm like, fuck it. It gets a 5-star rating from me. It doesn't get an Oscar, though. I'm not going to go that far, but it scared me and I liked it.
So what are some movies that have done that for you, like, recently, that have actually got, like, scared you or gotten under your skin?
Oh, my God. I mean, I can no longer do A24 movies after midnight. Literally, because even the ones I don't like are unsettling. The Dark and the Wicked really fucked me up because you know where the jumps should be, and they wait, and after you're like, I'm giving up. They're like, here it is. I'm like, not do that. Don't fuck up the rhythm.
That movie was really good with that, about like realizing when you're going to expect a jump scare and then like doubling down afterwards.
Yeah.
It was so good.
It was mean. I really liked it because it was mean.
Yep. I'm like, oh, this movie's really mean. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
I love the mean movies.
I love it. No, they're the best because they're just like, we don't care. You should have a nightmare too. And I'm like, I won't,
fuck your feelings.
Right? No, just like 100% fuck your drag. Here's some goats. And I was like, we didn't have to do all this.
Okay, so when you were a kid, what drew you to horror movies or horror as in general? Was there specific things that you liked, or?
Once I started watching them, I found out I actually did enjoy them. And I think it's because, like, you get to be scared for a set amount of time. Like, it's negotiable. Like, I know when I sat down, this movie's an hour and a half, and at the end, the credits are going to roll, and I can go back to the real world. But for an hour and a half, I get to be scared in a controlled environment. Because,
yeah. And so then what draws you to them now? Like, what draws you to them now as an adult?
I think it's a little bit of me rehashing things I didn't notice as a kid, because I think that as kids we're aware of things, but we don't have the vocabulary always, or we're not 100% sure what is going on. And so it's been kind of fun to go back and be like, I wanted to be a witch because witches were on the TV, and witch is code for feminism. Exorcisms are scary because they're always trying to shut women down from speaking. Like, literally, name me an exorcist movie that is not, this woman said something inappropriate, chain her down and let's exorcise the demon out of her. And I'm like, we need more information.
One small thing, she's crazy. She's insane. Right? It's fine. She's a crazy
or
bitch.
She's possessed.
Like, wait,
right? She asked for an orgasm, so therefore Satan is upon her. We should chain her down.
I can't argue with that logic.
Listen.
Yeah, but I welcome him. With open arms.
Come, Satan, come.
With arms wide open. Anyway.
No.
No. I tried. I thought I'd test the waters, and it didn't work, so we'll move on.
So you kind of answered this, but I'm curious, because you mentioned that if a movie gets you, that it gets a 5-star rating now as an adult. So do you not get scared at movies as an adult very often?
It's really hard.
Yeah.
I'm the person who's trying to not play on their phone while everybody else is like jumping. And I'm just like, you didn't know that was coming? And they're like, I don't watch as many horror movies. No, I did not know he was in the closet for her. And I'm like, well, here were the signs. First off, she was naked. Secondly, the closet was halfway open. Thirdly, the music. Fourthly, the light. And they're like, bitch, shut up. We're trying to have fun.
Did you not see them zoom in on the dark crack in the closet? Like,
right?
Duh.
Right? Where else would he be in the house? You knew it was her time. She's a secondary character. You knew it was her time.
She's kind of hot, so you know that she's going to get killed
She's the blonde friend. She's gone.
I do think that's the problem when you like study film or study like the structure of film in general, is that film tends to not be able to shock you or surprise you as often, because you're like, well, here's how this is all being set up, so this is the payoff that I'm going to get at a certain point. And that's kind of sad, but it also kind of shows how like rigid a lot of movies really are.
That's right. That's so funny that you say that, because so my fiance's like family's over right now, which is why I'm recording in the closet, and they're looking like at all the books that I have on our shelves, and like, you've got a lot of Blu-rays and books about horror movies. I'm like, yeah, you want to look at a book about like gender dynamics and slasher movies? They're like, what's a slasher movie? And I was like, oh, do you really want to start this conversation?
They're going down a rabbit hole. How long do you have?
I started talking about it, and then I was like, we're going to just reel this one in, because I don't think anyone really cares. But I was like, all right, so, you know, like, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, or, like, the meta-slasher Scream. And then Steve started jumping in with the Scream stuff, and they're like, what in the fuck are you talking about?
People who have watched less than 150 horror movies don't understand. There are different subgenres, because they're like, I hate horror. And then they're like, oh, no, my favorite movie is a vampire movie. I'm like, guess what? And they're like, but it's not a horror movie. Like, you just said it was a vampire in it, so let's open up this umbrella and help you figure out where it goes.
Well, and this is the thing. Like, horror is so much harder to define than most genres. I feel like Westerns and noir and comedy have, like, very specific things that indicate them as that genre, but horror is so diverse. There isn't really, like, one thing that you identify that, like, is, like, a thing that's across all horror movies. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's very hard to, like, define it as a genre other than scary. But then, like, scary is so subjective.
Right.
So it's like, you hate horror, but not really. Like, you hate certain kinds of horror, which is fine. But 100%. Actually, you don't like slashers, but you like creature features, things like that. So
100%.
Yeah, for sure.
I really loved the dialogue. Well, shouldn't say love. I found it fascinating. I found the dialogue fascinating around promising young woman and how like most men were like, this is not a horror. And you have a lot of those of us on the other side of this like power dynamic being like, oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is, Kenny. And so I was just watching people argue in the timeline and in like clubhouse rooms, and I'm just like, oh no, he does not hear himself.
Yeah, men had a lot of feelings about that movie. And I didn't like that movie personally for other reasons, but it was I would still call it a horror movie, even though I didn't like it. Like, it's terrifying. Again, because in that power dynamic, like, it's a horrifying prospect to be a woman.
100% for fucking cent. But we don't want to have that conversation ever. Instead, they're like, oh no, this isn't horror. But this time that Kenny directed it over here, I'm like, no, what Kenny did is not horror, and it's not the movie we should be talking about. I'm happy you're comfortable with what Kenny did for rape revenge movies, but not for me. Leave Kenny to what he's doing. Let him go with grace.
So, what are some of your favorite horror movies as an adult?
Ooh, oh my god, I don't know why that was a trick question.
Gotcha.
I've been on like a Korean horror film kick because my podcast, we've been trying to do better about leaving America because I always have a good time when we leave America. So we've done like The Closet, and we've done, oh my god, Metamorphosis. And we also did like A Tale of Two Sisters. Oh. But like, anytime I leave the country, literally, because like Tiger's Not Afraid does not get enough respect. I think what Issa Lopez does there is not classically horror, according to the frat boys, but it's horrific. And it gets us back into the discarded women pile, which is a theme we don't get enough women handling because it's a real issue and a real thing to be afraid of.
And the disenfranchised, because it's all about, the kids and the people that don't have a voice.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I think that what that movie does with giving us hope in a hopeless time and space, is really beautiful. And we don't give her enough credit because we're like Del Toro, who obviously we all love. Like, name me somebody who doesn't like Del Toro and I'll show you somebody who's a liar. But like, I think that Issa Lopez also deserves our love a lot of the time. And we're just like, oh, I haven't gotten around to that yet. And I'm like, cause she's a woman. I see you.
Give her more money to make more movies. You know what I mean? Like, please and thank you.
Please.
Listen. If I would open up my Venmo doll hairs, then the studio should as well.
I concur. 100%. 100%.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your career in writing and in the horror space. So tell us a little bit about your podcast, Nightmare on Fear Street.
Yes, A Nightmare on Fear Street is me and my friend from undergrad. We used to get drunk and watch horror movies, before and after rehearsals because we were theater kids. And so, like, you get a very finite time to multitask.
Fucking incredible.
Right? And so, like, during the pandemic, we were sort of reconnecting because what else are you going to do other than sit around and, like, go, hey, we haven't talked about horror movies in a minute. And he was cracking me up and I was cracking him up. And I was like, what if we start a podcast? Everybody else is. And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, let's just try and see how it feels. And it ended up finding people in different like countries and regions. And like, we have like a bigger fan base than I ever thought we would have. Cause I was like, I can name 3 friends who will listen to us and we can just end what we want to. And that is not the case. That is not the case at all. But we intersect horror through intersectional lenses, and like our guest list is pretty good about helping us do that and helping us look at things from different sides that we might not have like figured out on our own. Because we all love horror, but it's not kind to most of us. Just inherently, it is another patriarchy issue. And so that's not for the rest of us, supposedly, but we're gonna make it so. It's also funny. I
can't imagine it not being funny with you there, like, in the mix. Like, you are one of the funniest people, so I mean that as a high compliment.
Thank you. I keep forgetting to mention that it's funny because people are like, oh, this is one of those podcasts where you talk about the things. And I'm like, yes, but also,
you can also laugh about it.
We'll laugh and drink.
I am a deflector.
Right.
So I also want to hear more about, like, your life in theater. Like, you're a writer and a podcaster in the horror space, but you also are a playwright, and you also do directing, and you do directing of production with the theater company, right?
Yeah. I originally went to school for journalism because I knew I wanted to be a writer, but I also wanted to make money and pay rent. And journalism did not fit at the time, which I find spectacularly funny. How many times I've started freelancing. But I was like, I don't know if journalism's working out for me. And so...
Take a drink.
Right?
Take a drink.
Drinks to things I thought were not working.
I'll drink to that.
But are cool resume starters. I pivoted and I was like, what about mass comm? No. What about English? No. And then, like, I was, like, randomly working one of the many jobs I was working in college, and I was ushering the Lion King at, like, Bartle Hall in Kansas City, and I had to see it 12 times, which I hate. But the ASM was really hot and would dance with the hyenas, and so I'd watch him dance with them. Like, what is his job? I could do that. What is an ASM? I could do that. And so I transferred...
What is an ASM for those of us who do not know?
Sorry. Assistant Stage Manager.
Okay.
Cool.
Yes.
I was thinking you were missing the R, and it was like... Hello, what are you doing today?
I mean, he probably does that now because, like, life takes us places.
It sure does.
But I was like, I could do his job. And so I transferred into a theater program and learned how to do his job. But I also could not stop writing. I took a playwriting class, and it was the first time I saw people respond to my work in real time.
Hell
and
yeah.
I was like, this is a fun fucking high. And so I started writing more plays, and I was like, what if I went to grad school for playwriting instead of like something safe? Because I was like, stage management will be safe. And I'll write on the side because I was a full baby. You cannot stage manage and write on the side.
No. I feel like if you're a stage manager, all you do is work at... You don't have free time. That's not a thing. Or you have all the free time in the world. I feel like it's either two extremes.
If you're working, you're working. You
if
have
you're working,
time
you're
to
working.
do that and cry over your dinner as you do that. And so that's why I did not know that. Like, this is anxiety that I feel sometimes. Because I was like, it's working. I'm working.
Ain't that just the way?
Ain't it? Ooh. And so I was like, I'm gonna pause the stage management, even though I have like my tactical theater degree, which has also come in handy a couple times in the before times, because people are like, we want this design. Like, I can do just enough to get this check and make sure this sounds right.
Look, that's all any of us want to do. I know just enough to get the check.
Right?
Like, that is all that matters.
I don't need to be great. I need to be good. And I can be good. So yeah, I went to grad school and collected my third degree in imagination, which was for playwriting.
Where did you go to grad school?
Oh, Texas Tech. It's awful. I think people have to go there all the time. But I graduated and I have a degree somewhere. I think my name is spelled right. It happened.
Great. You did it.
I did a thing. We all make choices when we're young. That was a choice. Yeah, I could have just cut my own hair, but no, I went to grad school and I paid that off forever. And right after I left grad school, I went to Chicago, where I ended up like doing a little bit of technical theater stuff for some shady places that kept bouncing checks, as a young theater artist does.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so
I lived in Chicago for a bit, and most of my friends in theater, that was their exact experience in Chicago, where they got fired for really stupid reasons, so they wouldn't have to pay them.
I had a theater shut down on me while I was working a show. They forgot I was in the building that night and wanted to email me first to say that this was our last weekend open. And so I was like, pause mic check. And I was like, what do you mean this is my last shift and we're closed as of Monday and I'm invited to the New Year's Eve party? And they were like, oh yeah, we know you're working tonight and we wanted to tell you first because you're like family. And I'm like, stop saying that. I don't think you know what family means.
I hate that fucking phrase. You're like family. I don't think that phrase means what you think it means.
No. First off, all of us have weird baggage with our families, so like, why are we trying to use that one? Like, pick a dead.
Also, it's a little gaslighty. It's like, we really care about you.
Yeah.
We're letting you go. But we really care. We're like family. See you on the way out. Like,
Right?
It's like...
I am triggered whenever I'm working for a theater that buys me a meal because I'm just like, oh no, what have you done?
What
have you done?
What's the conditioning behind this? Like,
right?
What
This
do
is
I
guilt
owe you
pizza.
now?
Are you not going to pay us? Is my check going to bounce? Are you
I
closing?
hope you enjoyed that pizza because that was your paycheck.
That was
Right?
your paycheck for a month's worth of work.
Listen, we brought you dinner, and so we thought that we could just like hold this for a minute. And like, no, I still need to pay rent. That's a real thing. It doesn't go away because you brought me a sandwich.
But we're family.
Right? We're family. Our family will keep you from being homeless. And it's like, no, I'm gonna need money. Gonna need you to like pay some of these bounce checks because of you. But while I was there, I started freelancing, and I was like covering theater because like on the off nights I have off, or I would do some interviews via email. And I was like, I like this freelance life because I sort of get to do what I do. And like, I feel like if I can work from home with a glass of wine, I'm a better person.
I can agree with that 100%.
Listen.
I mean, for me, it's scotch, but I'm right there with you.
I love a bourbon too. But NPR doesn't do a bourbon box, so I've had to make do. But yeah, no, and like, so to fast forward, I liked freelancing, and some years happened in between that and here. And I started a podcast, and I also started writing for myself and putting it on Medium, because I had run-ins with editors writing about TV, and I was like, I will never work with this Neil again. And also, I'm tired of people like projecting and trying to like tell me what my experience is in an email when I'm just trying to write about Grownish. So we're not gonna do that no more. And so I was like, I'm gonna write for Medium. And then like I was hanging out on Twitter after some things happened with my podcast earlier this year. And I feel like and I had to
Sorry, something's in my throat. Oops.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Right?
I don't know what you could be talking about.
No, a thing happened. It's, yeah. This wine is amazing. But yeah, so a thing happened earlier this year with my podcast, and I had this like really cool influx of friends. And I was like, what do you mean you all are being paid to write about horror? This is new. People paying me for things in a timely fashion, you say. And so I submitted an article, and then I got hired because the article went well. And yeah.
Hell yeah.
And now I bother Mary Beth regularly.
It's my favorite.
That's awesome.
But like a lot of stuff, but kind of cool, like theater and play, like, I don't know, playwriting I think is like incredible, and I don't understand how you do it, and I think that's just amazing, like being able to write plays and have them like be produced and people actually performing them, like that's got to be so incredibly satisfying to see happen. I mean, exhausting and horrible, but also incredible to like see it happen in front of you.
Yeah, no, I definitely had a weird little career in playwriting. And so like a lot of my stuff ends up like hitting with like the college kids. And so they'll be on like New Play Exchange, which is a place you can go to like read all these new plays for like $10 a year. If you're just like into like random plays, highly recommend. But like they're on there because they're in college and they're doing the right things. And they're just like, I like this weird named girl and I like this play that she wrote. Can we do that next season? And so like in the before times, I'd be able to finagle like a flight to the school to come see like the first production and meet some of the students. Yeah. And because my plays have brown people in them, I usually get to talk to kids who are usually forgotten or mistreated.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, fucking yay.
That's amazing.
That's so awesome. That was always like, when I was in theater in college, like, well, to white people, and whenever we had parts for people of color, it was always like, oh, what can we do? And I'm like, don't cast a white person. It was always like the dumbest, like, whatever. But yes, like, it's incredible that they can actually have parts, and it's not just like, cool, what token character am I going to be cast as in the background?
Listen, no, I always love when somebody emails me, because it's usually, because again, PWIs, it's usually some white person who's like, I read your play and the lead is black. Is it okay if she's not black? Because I don't know how many black students we have here. And I'm like, it's been done in podunk towns across America. You can find a black girl. Good day. And then like you meet this beautiful black girl who they have never given a role to, and she's like, I came here to act 3 years ago. This is the only role I've gotten. And I'm like, why is this story not original? Thanks, academia. Yeah.
Wow.
Guys, white supremacy is lots of forms.
Listen. And that's why my medium is popular.
Wow. On that incredible note, Sharai, what movie did you bring with you today?
I decided to revisit Stir of Echoes for this podcast.
Hell yeah. So let me just give y'all a brief synopsis of Stir of Echoes before we start chatting about it. So Stir of Echoes, after being hypnotized by his sister-in-law, a man, played by Kevin Bacon, begins seeing haunting visions of a girl's ghost, and a mystery begins to unfold around him.
Yes. Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts about this movie, but before we get to like talking about it as adults, I want to know your Scarred for Life story. When did you see this? How did you see this? Why is it your choice for today? Give us your horror story.
Oh God, yes. I remember being a kid, and when I would get money, back then we had to do pay-per-view. So I saw that this was pay-per-view.
Damn.
Right?
Throw it back.
Listen, I turned 25 a couple times. And so I gave my mother my $5 and was like, I want this one. And so like I watched it like for 48 hours because back then you had, no, it was 24 back then. 48's a new thing that Amazon's given us. Kids these days don't even know. Back then you had 24 hours of the movie. And you didn't get to control when it started. After you hit play, it would play, and then it would play, and then it would play, and you were there, or you were not there.
Yep. God, I fucking forgot about that. It would just play on a loop. Oh, yeah. I totally forgot about
See, and I never had pay-per-view. We never had cable growing up. So like when people would talk about pay-per-view, it was like this whole new thing for me as a kid. I was like, what is that? I remember seeing 2 pay-per-view things my entire life.
We would sporadically have it, depending on how money was happening in any given month. And I would be like, we have it again? Awesome. Here's $5. I want some Urban Legends. And so I remember reading this and watching it because I had to, because it would go away, and just being terrified the whole time because I saw it just early enough where I was starting to really think about, like, what is the afterlife? What are ghosts? And also our house was like spooky as fuck. Like it was our second spooky house. And so I don't know if it's an energy that my mother was bringing with her or we just picked random haunted houses. I don't know.
Porcano's ghosts. It could be both of them. Fuck
it. Could be both.
Their vibes fed off of each other.
Right? They were clashing. But I was like, I'm seeing lots of shadows. Things are banging. Things are going missing. And that's part of what we see here, but like the ghost has a story in this one that's just unresolved. I've in my own life, I just grew up and moved away, and I let them go with God.
They can deal with it. Not your problem.
Right? I didn't ask to move there.
So what about it was terrifying to you as a kid? Was the existential like idea of the afterlife? Was it specific scenes?
I think it's the idea of ghosts. I think that I don't think we give ghosts enough credit for being scary. Because, I mean, like, home invasions, yeah, they're wrong and spooky. Demonic possessions, oh, hell yeah, really spooky. But, like, ghosts are just, like, the things that, if they do exist, because we don't know what things are happening and what things are not happening and what for and who not, that's a different energy. Because you could just be minding your own business, turn around and be like, oh, no, there's a ghost there. And what do you do other than give it the apartment? Like, there's no fighting that. There's no, like, calling a priest to exorcise me. It's just like, I saw a ghost and I can't go on anymore. I have to stop everything I was doing as a person. They scare me.
You know, okay, so speaking about ghosts, one of the things that always like, okay, you want to be helped, and yet you pick the worst time to like pop in and terrify someone. Because I'll tell you, the one scene that I remember when I first saw this movie that scared me was when Kevin Bacon sits down on the couch, leans to get his remote, and leans back, and boom, there's a girl right there. And I'm like, okay, if you're trying to get some help, why the hell are you scaring the shit out of him?
I look at ghosts like cats, in that they move in mysterious ways. They will appear, and you need to figure it out. So yeah.
That is fair. I've never thought of it that way, and that is actually kind of a perfect example.
Like, my niece Louise, she can't speak other than no. So, like, when she wants something, she's just like, I will attack you when you're not looking. And you will give me a thing. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. That was my eye. Can you do something else? Did
this have any lingering effects after you saw it? Or was this like, you just watched it and you're good after that? Because I know you lived in a creepy house, you said.
Yes. I lived in a creepy house, and we went to too many funerals as kids, and so dead people were already a no-go, but like dead people coming back to haunt you, I was like, oh, hell no, this is not Casper. And so it definitely stayed with me for like, every time I ever thought I was afraid of something, I was like, what if it's a ghost? What if that like feeling saying don't go in there is because there's a ghost in there, and my brain knows I'm not ready for that shit, and so I'm gonna go the long way around to get my water. I am also still afraid of cemeteries.
Okay.
I think it's because the little boy was living his best Little Red Riding Hood life in the cemetery, talking to the dead people, and I was like,
Oh my
no.
God, I love that fucking moment. He's like, this is so fun. I was like, I love you, kid. Like, you're so creepy.
No.
But wait, so was this like the movie that kind of like really introduced you to the concept of ghosts? Or like really made you think about the concept of ghosts?
It's the first one that really was like, ghosts are not to be fucked with. Because before that, you had like fun ghosts who were doing things and not really like trying to get anything across. They were just like, I'm a ghost in a movie. Ah, the frighters. But this one was like, hi. Ghosts are mad. You need to listen or they will come back for your ass. And I was like, I don't like this. Can we not do this?
Fair.
So I was like terrified of ghosts. I'm still pretty scared. I'm pretty scared of ghosts still. Like, I have a healthy fear. I don't know if they're real or not, but I'm gonna err on the side of caution because, like, I don't want to find out. But, like, growing up, the things that always scared me the most were ghost stories. Like, Poltergeist always scared the shit out of me. Ghost shows. I loved watching them, but, like, they would always terrify me, so I always had to sleep with the lights on in my house. And, like, I swear I saw ghosts and stuff like that. Like, not that many, but, like, I thought I saw some a couple times, and I was just like, fuck this. Like, absolutely not. So, like, I totally get that. Ghosts were, like, number one spooky ookie. I love monsters, but, like, ghosts, they could be anywhere, they could be anyone, and they don't have a physical form, and I think that kind of, that like, lack of tangibility also freaked me out, that they could, like, disappear and appear. I'm like, well, at least a person, like, is there in front of you, and you can hit it with something, and, like, a creature, you can hit it with something, but with a ghost, like, there's nothing you can fucking do, like you said. Like, what am I gonna do, sage my house, like, some kind of, like, white person? Like, like, that ain't gonna do anything. Like, have a priest come and bless my house. Like, we all know that wouldn't Amityville Horror. He just got yelled at. So just
Get out.
No.
I love talking about ghosts. Like, so I'm glad you picked this movie because I just like to go off about ghosts. But so my house growing up was brand new. Like, we built this house in this, like, abandoned lot in our neighborhood, and it was the lot where all the kids partied. I know. Oh, 100%. This is like a nightmare story. This is a nightmare story. Like, abandoned lot where all the kids partied. So, like, we found a lot of, like, needles in the ground and, like, beer bottles. But then also found creepy doll heads in the dirt and shit like that.
No.
My parents were always like, well, it's not haunted because, like, it's a new house. And I'm like, did you see the things we found in the dirt in the backyard?
Have you not seen Poltergeist?
Listen.
I know. It was so funny. And so, like, I always got the weirdest vibes in that house. And so did some of my friends. And, like, I never saw anything crazy, but, like, one time I heard something whispering my name, and that scared the shit out of me forever from that house. So, like, that house was, like, had weird vibes.
No.
I don't know.
No.
Anyway, I love talk about ghosts. So
I love
so I just share that before we talk.
I love it too, and I also love that the catalyst for him getting on his creepy kid's level is he was hypnotized and his switch was flipped. Because, like, some of us are just sensitive, or we just know things. I know, as a creepy kid, I would just sometimes know stuff. And I don't want to unpack that.
Yeah.
I like when I don't know things, but I can't help it. Because sometimes I just sit around and be like, oh, no, your middle name is this. And it's like, how'd you know that? I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to know.
I don't know. It just kind of popped in my head.
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, because, like, you know, like, Kevin Bacon's character is, like, this blue-collar guy, and they live in Chicago, and, like, it seems like a pretty blue-collar neighborhood. Like, everyone's kind
It's
of
a
like,
decent
this is a good neighborhood. Like, it's that house they have, like, you're trying to tell me blue-collar Chicago? Like, I lived in Chicago, and, like, I was in a shitty apartment, not the same thing, but that house costs so much money. Like, I can, just looking at it in Chicago, there is no way that any of those people could have lived in such beautiful homes. Or maybe not, I don't know, but, like, it was very unrealistic from what I know about Chicago and pricing in Chicago.
Even with inflation, the house that they lived in, they would have had to section it off into, like, 5 different apartments, and the ghost had to be hiding a specific person. Yes! Because there's no way in fuck you're gonna afford that house.
Yes! That would be someone would have that basement apartment and have her as, like, their ghostly, and they're in the wall. No. And they would, like, find it, like, at a TikTok or something. They'd find her fucking corpse behind that goddamn wall.
Literally, I see it on Ghost Light Housing right now. Just, like, a basement apartment. And you come over and they're, like, pulling the rug off in the kitchen and, like, opening the floor. They're like, here's your room. You have to share it with 2 other people. And I'm like, what do you mean? I thought a shared room was an accident. I'm like, no, it's a real shared room. And I'm like, I'm not going to share a room in the basement under your kitchen floor.
Which, by the way...
No.
The moment where they're
ridiculous.
like, I have to go to the basement, and they pull up the carpet, and they're like crawling. I'm like, oh, hell no. We had one of those.
You know when you cover it?
We had one of those in Alaska. When I lived in Alaska, it wasn't in the kitchen. It was like in the closet, but it was literally like, you pulled it up.
The closet's
I know. You pull it up, you go downstairs into the cellar, and I'm like, no. It's when I saw this, it brought that memory back as a kid of being like terrified of that little closet. And I can't imagine it being in the kitchen. I would be like, I would never want to go in the kitchen. What if you like fell into it, you know?
No. I don't. That's like in fucking the new Halloween movie too. Like, I just like, if you gotta cover the door with their carpet, like, then why they don't have it? Because that's like you're trying to hide it from people, and like that is I don't know.
I don't do basements. As a kid, whenever we had a basement, it was a creepy, dusty, spider rat filled situation, and you couldn't see past the bare bulbs. And I'm like, what kind of torture dungeons do we have, and why? What the fuck are we doing when I go to sleep? And so I already don't trust basements, and so the fact that we have to go down into that anxiety-inducing situation to turn the hot water on when it blows out, I would never have hot water. We would be cold showering, bathing forever.
I know. I'd be like, this is my fate now. I'm not going down there because I know the second I go down there, I've watched enough horror movies, I will die.
Listen.
Something is waiting down there for me.
My parents live in an old Victorian home that they have been like, you know, re-upping and like, you know, restoring and all that kind of stuff. But it was built, I think, in the 1800s, maybe. And the basement in there is like fucked. There's parts of it that are...
Terry sent me pictures of it, and I was like, you are haunted. Like, get out of there. It's like dirt floor basement.
There is...
Like, conjuring
There is
basement.
part of it that is like dirt floor. Yeah, seriously. There is part of it that is literally dirt. And I'm like, there's bodies in there. I know there is. Samantha is probably 100%. Buried down there.
Listen. No, like because I was born and raised in Missouri, and so there are so many serial killers who would just like put women in basements and trash cans. Which is still a phenomenon today. And so like I don't fuss with basements, especially old basements. Because, like, it always ends with, he was such a good neighbor.
My parents, the town that they live in, this was something that happened, like, 2 years ago.
What are you about to say?
Some girl ran out of a man's house. He had taken her down to to his basement and had doused her in gasoline and was planning to light her on fire.
No. Right?
Yes.
Right? Basements are not good.
No.
It made dating hard because it's just like, oh yeah, no, I'm in a basement apartment. Like, the fuck you are. Don't lie to me.
You're like, absolutely. I don't care how finished your basement is. Like, that's a nightmare zone. I know what happens in basements. Right? Well, and so it's like, you have this, like, obviously creepy basement in this nice house, but they are blue-collar workers. Like, he works, I think, electrical stuff, and he's, like, such a non-believer. And then you have the witchy sister, of course, hypnotize
Ileana
him
Douglas.
when they're across. Love
I was obsessed with
her
her as a child, but also I forgot that this is one of the few movies where they actually let her play a lesbian because they were always coding her because she was a brunette and she was a smart one. So it's alluded to.
So you're a lesbian.
Yeah. And it was always alluded to. But in this one, they were like, oh no, there's a girl on her couch, but also it's the 90s. I was like, okay.
I know. I was like, is she actually gay, or are you just having it look like, I don't know. Who knows in these fucking movies, like, what you're trying to do. But I love the hypnosis scene because it's something out of a David Lynch movie. It's so weird. Like, it does not match the rest of the movie where it's just like a creepy screen and it just like is blurred word sleep, and he's floating on the chair towards it. It's like the weirdest fever dream moment, but I loved it. I was like, this is an incredible way of like showing hypnosis as like a very weird experience. I have never been hypnotized ever. I don't trust. Again, I don't know if that's true, but I don't want to fuck with it. Like, I just cautious about that. But I did love that moment where it's just like, what the fuck is happening? And it feels so it's like such a weird liminal space in the movie, but I really liked it because I have not seen this movie in so long. I remembered nothing about it except for Samantha's character, who's played by an actress in Bones. And I was like, oh yeah, she's in this movie. But to my mom, this was the scariest movie she'd ever seen. Like, she would not watch this movie. And when I watched it, I was like, it's not that scary. And like, I saw it when I was like in middle school or high school. And I was like, oh, if my mom is scared of it, it has to be scary. My mom is not a scary movie person at all. And I watched it and I was like, this was kind of lame. I don't think it's lame now. As an adult, I actually really enjoyed watching it. But when I was a kid, I was like, because my mom had hyped it up as this like horrific ghost story. And I was like, this is cheese.
No, a kid, listen, as a kid, I was already a ruiner, so I knew where it was going. Also, that wall looked real fucking fake, but before we even, like, were supposed to notice it. And I was like, she's in that wall. Look behind you, Kevin Bacon, like Blue's Clues. But, like,
No, he's got to dig up the entire backyard first. And shirtless with his weird back tattoo, he has to dig up the entire backyard.
It wasn't his contract to be shirtless.
Thankful. I'm thankful for that moment, though.
He was in good shape to be like 41, 42 when that came out.
He's a very hot man.
I have never been like a huge like Kevin Bacon is hot person. Like I can appreciate it, but in this movie I was like, all right, I get it.
It comes and it...
But your wife is hotter than you.
It comes and it goes for me because I'm a child of the 90s. So I'm like, oh yeah, Footloose. But then he was like, I'm going to play a bunch of douchebags that are shirtless doing sweaty things for a decade. And I'm like, okay,
listen, that is like an aesthetic for someone. I'm just going to say, for me, I've been a fan of him since like I was a kid. Because I remember I grew up in the 80s. Like that was when my childhood was in the like 80s, early 90s. And I remember, Tremors and being like, whew, I don't know why this man is making me feel certain ways. And then like, you see him in this movie and it's like, oh, sledgehammer me, daddy. Like, it's just like, I was thinking recently as I've been like scrolling through TikTok over the last like month, and there's this one video that keeps showing up and people keep reacting to it of this man who is incredibly buff and he has like the sledgehammer and he is breaking apart wood, like logs of wood and just like bang and cracking it in half. And I'm just like, ooh, this is making me feel certain ways. And this movie made me feel certain ways, particularly when he's in the basement using that sledgehammer and just cracking the wall and the floor. And I'm like, okay, I'm here for this.
Listen, because like there's a lot going on in this movie. And so I love that they took the time to be like, Kevin Bacon can still get it, everybody. Just so you're all aware, this is the campaign. He can still get it. But also we have a dead girl and a message to give you. And I'm like, thank you. Priorities.
We can have it all. We can have it all. It can be a movie about this horrifically sad murder of a young girl getting taken advantage of by the neighborhood boys. And a reminder that Kevin Bacon is still
But
fuckable.
also, like, just the year before, he was doing Wild Things, and I saw his penis.
That was the year before.
Yeah.
She's on Netflix. I've never seen her. And she's on my list of to watch immediately.
Girl, you gotta watch it. We covered it on our Little Cuts. We've been doing like erotic thrillers in that movie.
Listen.
It is incredible.
You don't know where it's gonna go.
Listen.
It's so fun. Just get like a big glass of wine and just vibe. Like it's exactly that's how you should be watching that movie.
I do have most Kevin Bacon movies because, like, again, I love him, but sometimes he says yes to things.
He sure does.
We don't talk about him enough because Nicolas Cage is out here wilding out, but like also Kevin Bacon is a little chaotic sometimes.
He is.
He is a little bit chaotic. He definitely is. He's not as like unhinged, but he definitely is chaotic in the movie choices that he does, like the movies that he chooses to be in.
Like, I look at it as like Nicolas Cage is that faculty member with tenure, and Kevin Bacon is that faculty member that wants tenure. And so
He's
you
waiting
see
for his
it.
Nick Cage moment where he can just act full unhinged.
Oh,
right?
I love it.
my God.
Just
You
taking
see
that
it,
time.
That
man.
horror movie with Amanda Seyfried was probably he thought was his moment,
Which,
but it was
by
not
the
the
way,
moment.
directed by the same director as this movie.
No way! Are you serious?
I am dead serious. David
was
Coeb
awful.
directed that one and did this one.
It was awful. I watched it a couple months ago, and I remember tweeting or texting a friend and being like, how could the people I love so much hurt me so much? How? What did I do?
And I loved the concept, but
Now,
guess not.
I saw this movie in the movie theater in 1999, which was, we've said this a million times, but that was a GOAT year for cinema.
Mm-hmm.
1999 was, in my opinion, the best year for cinema that we've ever had, I think. But
Yep.
So we saw this, and this movie had the unfortunate luck of being released 1 month after The Sixth Sense. And so it kind of didn't do as hot as that movie because A, it was rated R, and B, everyone had just seen The Sixth Sense. And let's be honest, if people are thinking about ghost stories of the 90s, that's going to be the one you're going to remember, not A Stir of Echoes, even though I think this is a banger movie. You know, it just had the unfortunate release schedule. But I loved it. I saw it in the theater, and I absolutely loved it. Everything worked for me, but that was back in the time where it's like you have like, you know, a big screen. You don't have any like cell phones or anything to like distract you. So for that whole 90 minutes, I was like enraptured in what was happening, and it surprised me in ways that I wasn't expecting.
I'm going to say something blasphemous on your podcast. I like this more than The Sixth Sense. Both are predictable as a child.
Whoa.
But I had fun with this one.
Hot take, but I love it.
I have an M. Night Shyamalan problem. I don't talk about it a lot because, like, I know not to say things in public, but I always pick these movies, like, in the first 5 minutes, and so I stop seeing them. Because I'm just like, why am I giving you money if I know it's going to end?
Okay.
And I don't have a good time because I'm just like, this is what it is, isn't it? This is the village, isn't it? And he's like, you don't know. I'm like, I know, it's the village. And then we get there and I'm like, why did we do that? And so I stopped. I cut him out of my life. But again, both of those movies, Sixth Sense and this one, were predictable, but I had more fun, even though I knew where this one was going to go, as opposed to The Sixth Sense. I was like, Haley Joel Osment and Toni Collette are great. But as a child, I'm asking for more of my horror movies right now. So I just did not.
Well, yeah, because this one feels more like a horror movie to me. Like, obviously, Sixth Sense is scary, but like this one felt more like more of a straight up ghost story. And this, like, Sixth Sense had much more kind of emotional weight behind it, and was like playing more with with grief and that kind of stuff. Where this one was a lot more straightforward. It wasn't really like, there obviously is kind of a twist, but it wasn't leading up to like a huge twist, to me at least. Like, it was relatively, you could see where it was going, but you still loved the journey getting there because it was like kind of, I don't camp is the right word, but like over the top and fun. So it was a little bit more like, well, I'm enjoying the ride to get here, so why the fuck not?
And I think that's part of my Shyamalan problem, is that like he hinges so much on the big twist, but the big twist is always something that's really easy to identify, and it's usually given out in the first 5 minutes, if not the trailer. He's another reason I don't do trailers anymore.
Well, I think that's what's so sad about his stuff now, too, is, like, everyone knows he's the twist guy. So it's like, well, you have to, like, foreshadow the big twist in the trailer. And I think I do like Shyamalan, like his older stuff, but I feel bad for him, like, that he has become that guy, because I feel like there's so much pressure put on him, and like everyone's trying to predict the twist so quickly. And I'm just like, ooh, you kind of painted yourself into a corner, dude. And I'm sorry, like, you're not a bad filmmaker, but I think you just kind of got this reputation, and maybe you can't really like get out of it, because I feel like everyone kind of expects that from him at this point, like the big twist. But The Sixth Sense was his first one that had any of that, so I guess that kind of like set the precedent.
Yeah, no, because I remember going back for The Village, which I predicted again. I went back for Signs, which I don't think anybody still knows what it's about. I think as a collective, we've given up trying to figure that one out. And I was like, okay, so he can surprise me.
Still scared the shit out of me. I don't even care.
I was anywhere for Mr. Phoenix at that age and era. I can't go back because Mel Gibson is there, and I feel like I'm just tired of looking at him and hearing him. But like, I was very much about Mr. Phoenix. I was like, I don't know what's happening with the water and the aliens, but I like looking at him. So I'm gonna stick it out. I don't know what the movie was about. When the alien walks across, it should not be scary, but I jumped. Because, like, it's not even a good jump scare. I was like, oh, fuck. And I was like, it was there the whole time, though. Why am I afraid?
So the one lasting thing that I will say about the Stir of Echoes, that my first watch that really pulled me in, was that I think this was the movie that sent me down a Richard Matheson rabbit hole, who is the author that this movie is based on. And I gobbled up all of his books that I could find, and I started watching movies based on his books. And the man is like a huge inspiration for writers. I mean, you have people like Stephen King crediting him and actually dedicating some of his novels to him. George Romero acknowledged that Matheson was an inspiration, and that the creatures in the Last Man on Earth, which was an adaptation of I Am Legend, was the inspiration for his Night of the Living Dead ghouls. And also, Anne Rice said that the short story A Dress of White Silk by him was an early influence on her interest in vampires and fantasy fiction. Upon his death in 2013, you had a bunch of like movie directors. Steven Spielberg, who directed The Duel, that was written by Richard Matheson. That was his first movie. Written by Richard Matheson. He, came out with some really nice things to say. Edgar Wright, Roger Corman. Like, he's an unsung horror fiction author that I think is like one of those people that write or that make horror movies know more about than the general populace, even though chances are you have seen something that he has either written or that has been written based on his stuff, like Duel, Steven Spielberg's first movie, The Last Man, The Omega Man, I Am Legend, all of those based on I Am Legend, The Legend of Hell House, What Dreams May Come, that Richard Kelly movie, The Box, Real Steel, that movie about the boxing robots. Like all of these movies.
Wait, that's by Richard Matheson?
It's based on a story
the Hugh Jackman movie with the box.
Yeah, it's based on a short story by Richard Matheson.
I'm in love.
I have not read a lot of his stuff.
Yeah.
Like I have not read a lot of his stuff, and like I know about him, but I've never really read a lot of his stuff. But okay, I also know there's screenplays.
Yeah, so he also,
too, right?
I mean, we talked about this next movie, Mary Beth, on Little Cuts, Die, Die, My Darling, written by him, The Incredible Shrinking Man, written by him, The Pit and the Pendulum, House of Usher, Jaws 3D. They can't all be great.
I'm sorry, Richard Matheson wrote Jaws 3D.
He did with someone else. It was him and another writer.
Sometimes it happens.
What?
You know,
I'm not going to judge him.
No, that's fair. But it's just funny that he wrote all that stuff and then wrote that.
That always happens. It's like banger, banger, banger. This Lifetime Hallmark movie. I'm like, what? They do collaborations? Yeah, and KFC. And I'm like, what? And then another banger. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Sometimes you gotta pay, like you said, you gotta pay.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a guy that has like influenced horror writers, horror filmmakers, and chances are our listeners have seen at least one movie that he's either written or is based on his books. And I think that's kind of sad because I don't think he got the mainstream recognition that other horror authors do. But like, this is a man that was killing it from like, I think in the 50s up until when he died in 2013.
Yeah, no, I got to read some more of his stuff because that's a lot of things I like and love.
Legend of Hell House, I recommend. Really good book. I haven't read it in probably 25 years, but like...
Oh, I've read that one. It's really good.
Yeah.
That one I've read of his, and I did enjoy that quite a bit. So, okay, so was Stir of Echoes the name of the story he wrote,
yes,
or the book?
Yes, it was.
Okay, is it a full book?
I believe so. I believe it was, yeah.
Okay.
It was written in 1958.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Are you serious?
Well, that's wild. But, like, kudos to him for writing one of the creepiest kids ever. Like, I thought I had seen all kinds of creepy motherfucking kids on screen. I had forgot, like, this came back to me when I was watching it. Like, this kid is incredible. He is so creepy.
He really is.
Like, he's got the most, like, cherubic little face. It's like Haley Joel Osment. I was like comparing the two, just thinking about it, because obviously they came out. So like Haley Joel Osment is just a little grown up. Like he is like sad, like he's very sad, and he's like very kind of like, you know, wise for his age, all that like shit that people say about kids who've gone through trauma who like don't know how, like have to grow up really quickly. Meanwhile, this little boy is still a little kid. Like he is very much a little kid. Like he seems like he's got like a little bit of that wise beyond his years thing, but he still acts like a kid. And he's got the little cherubic face, so he looks like a baby still. And then he starts giggling and like talking to things. And like when he tells his dad to get him his bug pajamas so he can talk to the ghost some more out of his bath, I was like, I can't do this. Like he is such a good, creepy little kid. And the fact, there's a line where Maggie, the wife, says, the two of them sit together and whisper, and I walk into the room and they stop talking. Like, that is the creepiest shit to me, that, like, becomes an outsider in her own home because she can't see the ghosts. And they're, like, the two, like, the dad and the kid are, like, having their own little secret meetings, and she walks in and she's completely isolated out of it. Like, I never caught how creepy that was when I first watched it.
This watch, I noticed that I got really annoyed with her because her son and her husband are talking to dead people and looking for a dead body in the house. And she's just like, we talk about our marriage. And I'm like, your marriage needs to fucking wait. There's a dead girl in your house. Priorities, Maggie.
Meanwhile, Maggie's like, can you please go to work?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? Please, we need you to go to work. I'm pregnant again. And he's like, I can't. I'm busy. And she's like, dude, please.
Okay, but his busy... But his busy is it was a hilarious scene rewatching it this time where he's trying to recreate the events of like grabbing his remote and sitting back on the couch and looking to his left to see if she's there. That is his time spent at home, is like this constant like, are you there?
Yep.
Are you there?
To be fair, bills are valid, and I'm here for that part of the argument. But like when they're fighting, after she pulls him out of digging the holes, looking for this dead girl, and is like, what are we doing? And I was like, now's not for feelings. Grab a shovel, find this dead girl, wrap this up. You have other things to be worried about right now.
Even when she's like, my grandma died, and he's like, I can't, I have plans. And she's like, are you fucking kidding me?
I too would have been like, dead girl or your dead grandma. I'm sorry, but this is a priority. I can't sleep. We are being haunted. This child is talking to dead girls and being kidnapped by babysitters who are going to do Gilmore Girls, and you talk about your grandmother right now, and we gotta prioritize Maggie. And she's like, I just
gotta say, when she walks out and they're all digging in the holes, and his thing is like, well, don't worry, the body is not over there. I'm pretty sure. Because like, she's like, you're involving my kid, and my kid is gonna like possibly dig this body up. And he's like, oh, don't worry, I'm sending him over there. But it's just like this.
And he's putting it in his little truck. He's putting the dirt in his little truck, and he's like driving it around.
It's so funny, but it's also kind of disturbing. Can you imagine? I mean, just like divorcing this from like the rest of what is going on. Can you imagine if you were the woman in this situation, and your son and your husband are like whispering in rooms, and like the kid says, I don't want to talk about this because it scares mommy. And so then they go do all this hush stuff, and you walk out and your yard is destroyed because your husband is digging holes and your poor kid is off in the corner digging holes. Can you imagine how like upsetting that would be though?
My moment would be to either leave both of their haunted asses, because again, I should not be a mother, or to help them dig, because if I'm going to stick it out with this family unit, we should figure out the dead girl situation. I can't focus on other things. I can't make the cereal in the morning and take him to daycare, because there is a dead girl in my house. I can't sleep here when she's here.
Look, if 2 out of the 3 in the household are saying there's a dead girl in the house, I would probably be like, all right, probably. 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3.
But 1 out of 3 is the kid. Let's be honest, who was introduced talking to the camera, and it's revealed that he's talking to the corner of the room. I mean, this kid is creepy.
Listen.
He's so creepy.
She also believes it enough to go visit the cop that they meet in the cemetery to be like, tell me what's going on with my husband. And I'm like, if you can believe him in this moment, why do we start over every day? Why is it 51st dates with you, Maggie? What do you forget at night?
But then I feel so bad because like then it's like her sister goes like something along the lines of like, it's always the woman who has to help the guy, like in these situations. And I kind of love that moment of like, it's always the wife's duty to like save him from these scenarios. And I was like, okay, look at you, like kind of like self-aware of like this kind of narrative of the woman like having to kind of pull the husband back to earth, and like, sure, he's right, but he still gets himself into the shit at the end. Like, I found the body, but I'm still fucked because everyone else is like coming down on him, and then she appears and is like, oh, let me help him.
I love that. And I feel like a lot of the conversations you wanted to have with him should have been had at the top half of the movie before shit got flipped. Because he was not a great husband-father situation. And if she wanted to yell at him before he started seeing dead people, I'd have been like, get it, girl. But she was like, none did you see dead people. I also want to talk to you about the trash. You don't take it out often enough. And I was like, girl, what? I need you.
The dead girl was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Right? She's like, now that we have a real problem, let's talk about the problems we should have been talking about. And I'm like, get you some couples therapy after you find this dead girl. Because again, she is in your home.
Nothing like a haunting to really test your relationship and either bring you together or push you apart.
Listen, and after they survive barely, it's like, okay, our marriage is strong now. And I'm like, no, it shouldn't take a dead girl to bring you together. You need to work on communication before the next dead girl. Can you do that? And they're like, we held hands in front of the U-Haul, so it's going to be good.
Oh my God, that scene where they're like walking and then it's like the camera just focusing on moving. I'm like, okay, David Coep, we get it. They're moving away. And then the hands are like holding each other.
I would have loved it better if they stayed there. Honestly, if they had stayed in that house, it would have been incredible.
Oh my God.
That would have been so funny. Like, they're like, no, we're reclaiming this shit. Or dumb. That's more like dumb, but I think it'd be so funny if they stayed. Like, I would...
Too many dead people in that house.
You can fix it.
Too many dead people.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. A couple more dead people.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so like let's talk about Samantha, the woman who was killed, and then like what happened to her, because I was so angry because So Samantha is the dead girl, always the dead girl, always a girl, and they said some pretty shitty stuff about her before, you know, her story is told about her being like slow.
Oh my
If I
god,
took
the
a-
R
and, like,
word
saying-
comes out.
If I took a drink every time the R word was said in this good neighborhood with good people, and
Decent
I was like,
neighborhood. Decent neighborhood.
right? I'm like, for Boston, maybe. Not for Chicago. The fuck are you doing, Kevin Bacon?
Yeah, no, seriously. I was like, I'm sorry, where are we? Like, are we in an Irish Philly
Right?
neighborhood right now? Like, what are
I
we
took this
doing?
to Ben Affleck,
I
not
know.
for you. Like, I was just...
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. I was like, we're really having a good time saying the R slur about a lot of shit over here, huh? And like, to her and about her, when what it seems like is that she was just kind of like the weird girl at school, which means she had like little glasses and mousy brown hair. Like, that was like what she...
No.
And like a little bit awkward because everyone bullied her. And then these two boys, the sons of like the neighbors, I think it's the son of two of Kevin Bacon's friends.
Yeah.
One of which owns the house that he's living in.
Yeah. And so the house is being renovated and they invite her into the house and he's like, basically wants to rape her. And like, or like, he wants to like coerce her into having sex with him. And she's like, no. And then he pushes her down and kills and like knocks her head out. Her tooth falls out. And
breaks her
then
nail.
he ends up like breaks her nail and then smothers her with plastic. And they're like, oh shit, she's dead. And the reason she's dead is because these two boys were drinking and wanted to take advantage of the weird girl and be disgusting rapists as teenage boys. And their fathers cover up the shit. And they put that girl on the wall. And it's like, not just these boys, it is their fathers who help them cover up the crime. As like a boys will be boys, like they can't go to prison.
Well, that's
type
the
of
thing
fucking
that leapt out to me on this rewatch is the way that Frank is trying to like rationalize what they did to Tom. And I wrote this whole thing down where he says, what were we supposed to do? It was an accident. The damage is done. There's nothing anybody can do to bring her back. And then, and I like in my notes bolded, underlined all this shit because these kids got everything ahead of them. So what were we supposed to do, Tom? Send these kids to jail for the rest of their lives because of her? And I'm like, excuse me, 16 years later, we have Brock Turner's father going on to saying basically the same thing of like asking for lenience because there's a steep price to pay for 20 minutes of action out of his 20 plus years of life. I'm like, this is the same thing that was being said 15 years, 16 years after this movie. And it's something that is still being a conversation point today is like, I was thinking about in particular, Promising Young Woman.
Promising Young
Woman. I'm like, wait, that's not right. Promising Young Woman. I was thinking about that and that whole dialogue and what that movie was kind of haphazardly kind of talk about, but like, it's still pertinent when this movie was made. And it's almost like that line, it feels like it should have been made after the Brock Turner situation. Because it's like almost literally word for word what the father of Brock Turner used to defend him.
While we're talking about that particular douchebag dad, when he comes up to save them and shoots the other son and other father, and he's like, well, I couldn't let cold-blooded murder happen in this house. This is a decent neighborhood.
This is a decent neighborhood.
I'm
Take
like,
a drink.
Your son just murdered a bitch. So, like, where's your line? Where's your line, Frank? Because, again, she's just a girl. It doesn't matter. She's dead. But, like, you're going to kill other people.
I just can't. People just don't get it. I don't know how to put, like, the exhaustion of being a woman, the danger that women are under all the time. And, like, I'm saying this as a privileged white lady. And, like, you know, the dangers that we face all the time. And just, like, the attitudes that men have of, like, oh, well, it's just a girl. We have our whole life ahead of us. It's like, what? So her life, do you mean that she doesn't have a life? Like, is she not a person? Is she not a human who would have had a whole life in front of her and she was murdered because your son wanted to fuck her out of like some sick game? It's so sad that this is still a thing. That just like, Jesus Christ, Misu. Oh, sorry. But like, it's just so fucked up and fucking ridiculous that this is still a thing. And like 1999, this is happening, and now it's just like,
it's like the same dialogue, but nothing's changed. The actors are different, but it's the same thing.
Because America don't fix her problems.
No.
America will never fix her problems.
No.
She'll put on a new wig and tell you it's a new day and go about her business. Meanwhile, we still have this same conversation happening. We are still having people who are afraid to go outside because of gun violence, and we won't talk about that. Because why would we fix that problem? We don't have healthcare. We still have student loans, and you have the older generations for the most part just sort of being like, that's the way it was when I was your age, so sorry about it. And I'm like, what if we changed it?
If it is broke,
Phil?
don't fix it.
Listen. And they're like, I turned out fine. Like, clearly you didn't because you have no heart.
did you?
So maybe we should change it. A thing I noticed this watch, which I don't think I noticed as a child, is Kevin Bacon, when he's like, how do I defend myself? He picks up the keys and he threads them through his knuckles like women are taught to do, because instead of fixing rape culture, we're given keys. And I'm like, good luck. I thought that was an interesting detail after he realizes what happened to this girl.
Right.
Oh, I totally didn't clock that. Oh.
Yeah. And then, of course, his wife comes in with the knife and they, like, almost get murdered. But I was like...
But, so, the other thing, though, is, like, I wish they did a little bit more with, like, her sister, who was the babysitter, who, like, takes the kid and is, like... That kind of shows you, like, there's, like, a glimpse of the whole, like, oh, this is, like, the effect of the violence. It's not, like, just on the boys, but on the family. Mm-hmm. But they didn't do a lot with that. And, like, I know, it's, like, movies and stuff. But it just was, like, I still kind of liked, they tried to kind of hint at, like, there's a whole family who is still looking for her. Yeah. And is, like, mourning her death. And it's not just, she's not just some girl. She is someone's sister, someone's daughter. And you shouldn't even have to, like, like, I have daughters, the whole dialogue. I have daughters now, so I know what it's like.
Right.
But, like, there are people who cared about her. And, like, she was discarded like trash by these people. And that's just, like, it's just, Jesus fucking Christ. It's just so fucking heartbreaking. And the only way that she can get help is from these random family that moves in. And, like, thank God they eventually listen, but, like, that's just, like, so heartbreaking that the only way that she can get justice is, like, reaching out to these people. And just by some coincidence with hypnosis does the dad open up. And it's just, like, think about that. Like, I guess that's a tragedy with ghosts in general. You know what I mean? Like, not all the time are they, like, hidden in walls and shit if they're real. Doesn't that, like, suck to think of? There's, like, things going around, like, want you to listen to them and you can't hear them or listen to them. Like, that's so tragic. I'm getting in my feelings about ghosts right now. But...
One of the things I've realized, just since we've started doing ghosts on our own podcast, is that usually in America, and this is a rare exception, but usually in America, the ghost is the problem and the people are trying to fix the ghost. Whereas when you, like, go to, like, Spain and other countries, it's like, no, the ghost is a victim. Remember, somebody killed the ghost. It's not how it's haunting you. It's about who did the thing to the ghost. Let's focus on that. And... Yeah. I like that narrative more because I think that it makes the idea of ghosts being a possibility less scary. Because it's just like, I too have some enemies. I respect this. As opposed to, oh no, this thing is haunting me. Burn it. Go burn the bones like it's supernatural. It's like, but what does it want? Who wronged it? Who put it here? Why are they dead?
Well, and that's why I love the Fear Street trilogy that kind of tried to invert that just briefly, like where she's like, oh, Sarah Fear's bad, scary, and then they find out, oh, actually, like, she was fucked over by a man. I mean, I'll have to talk about Fear Street because I know there's a lot of stuff with that, but it was kind of nice that it like flipped that script a little bit on the haunting, ghost, curse shit.
Well, it's also interesting that that this movie and Sixth Sense came out in the same year, and they're both about kind of understanding the ghost as being a victim, because that was part of like Haley Joel Osment's character in The Sixth Sense, going through and figuring out what was it that needs to bring the ghost to peace, particularly with that young girl that was poisoned by her mom. And here we have like this ghost being a victim, and it's like the kid and this man. It's kind of weird that we have like men speaking for the women at this point, but like, you know, that's what this story is happening here, where it's like where they're having to figure out why that person is still there and why they can't go on. And so it's interesting that these both came out within a month of each other, and they're kind of about similar things. This
was that era, though, because if I'm not mistaken, Alice Sebold's The Lovely Bones, the book, came out around then.
Oh.
And was made into a movie, but with Mark Wahlberg, and things happen. And I know that she's also a little bit of a suspect character as a person now, because things have...
Oh, as of like a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, which is sad, because I was rooting for her, and you can't root for people in this new world, is what I'm finding out. So, but it was definitely that era of, what if ghosts were just trying to talk to us and like finish some unfinished business? And then it quickly went away, and they were like, no, back to burn these bones. And I was like, it was more interesting when we gave the ghost layers, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And just to touch on something from the very end of the movie with the ghosts, and Terry mentioned this in our notes about how at the end, the little boy, Jake, is that his name, the little boy? Like, where it does not end, like, we see, like, them holding hands in front of the U-Haul, but the boy is holding his ears because all he can hear are the ghosts. So, like, his dad turned it off, maybe, but this little boy kind of like Haley Joel Osment's character, a little cursed here, and, like, there's no resolution. He just, like, is driving away and being like, cool, all I hear are fucked up ghosts, and I don't know what to do about it.
In my mind, actually, I think that, like, in some ways, you could almost take this movie, it's not obviously, but you could kind of take that character as being the man that kind of grows up to being the guy that kills Bruce Willis at the beginning of Sixth Sense.
Oh,
where it's like this kid is like unable to deal with the fact that he keeps hearing ghosts, and so what does he do? He goes to see Bruce Willis and ends up killing him years later because he didn't fix him. Like, that's like how I was watching this now as an adult, being like, ooh, there's like connections here, even though completely unintentional, you know, but like,
I like it.
Still, I love that, though.
Let's make it canon. Let's just make it canon.
I think we should, because his life is worse. His life does not end up better. That scene is actually quite heartbreaking, where he's in the car. Parents are like, "Oh yeah, we've renewed our, you know." Hi, Misu. We've renewed our love. Everything's fine. We're moving on. We're getting a new place. And they're talking, and he is in the back seat covering his ears because it's not over for him. And it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
No, that was another thing that sat with me as a kid, because I'm just like, what if I do happen to like be seeing shit that's not there but is there? I don't want to see it forever.
Yeah.
I want office hours. I don't want to be like trying to go to the bathroom and being like, oh no, Mr. Ghost, can I have a moment? And
can you imagine how exhausting that would be? Like, okay, let me bring out my therapy book. What problems are we dealing with today? I'm on the shitter, Ghost.
Right? Also,
like, leave me alone.
Right? It's like you don't get a moment alone, because like him and his wife were trying to have sex after Switches first flipped, and like he's getting visions, and he's like, "Oh no, it was awful. I was being attacked." She's like, "Well, thanks for that." And I was like, "Maggie, you are already not reading the room here. Not everything is about your marriage. It should have been in those first 5 minutes, but you let it go, and here we are.
Here we are.
Now
You're
you have
in
to wait
and
your
out,
turn.
girl.
You have to wait your turn now, Maggie, because now there's a dead girl. Have you said something before? We wouldn't be here. But you want to walk around living your best Lisa Loeb life and letting it go.
Oh
and
my
now
God.
here we are.
Lisa Loeb life, yes.
Right? No.
Oh my
it was
God.
very much a Lisa Loeb vibe in the
Oh,
wardrobe department
so
for her
much.
and her sister.
I miss you.
I loved it.
Oh, I miss you.
Stay. I only hear what I want to.
Well, hey, I mean, that does sound like it's written about Maggie.
That's another thing. The soundtrack had like Poe over the credits.
Oh,
doing
yeah,
a
it did.
song. I think I wrote the song down.
Mhm.
Hello, which I thought was cute. But also, Beth Orton was here. And I was like, well, how do you tell us you went to Lilith Fair in the 90s without telling us you went to Lilith Fair in the 90s?
Incredible.
I do have one final little question, because this is something that I see in movies a whole lot, and I'm just curious, did any of you ever grow up with light boxes that swirl images around the room, or is that only a cinema thing?
I didn't have one, but I babysat kids who did.
Because I always saw them in movies.
And I hated them because I saw them in movies and horror movies. And I was like, there was two instances. There was one little girl I babysat in a house that creeped me the fuck out that had one. Nothing happened, but it just kind of weirded me out, just like the vibes. And then another, it wasn't a box, but it was a turtle, and it would project stars out of its back.
Oh.
Mm-mm.
And that always, again, weirded me out. I'm like, I just feel like that is right for some weird figure to go across the little lights and do weird shit. So yeah, I've seen them, and they go in real life in places. I just never.
They come across
had
as
one.
a trope in ghost movies in particular. There's always if there's movies about a kid, chances are the kid's gonna have that light box and it's gonna be creepy. And I'm like, I never had those, and I don't think I've actually ever seen one in life.
I will say that the kids in horror movies have the best toys and things.
Oh.
And as a child, I was led to believe that we were just like these poor people who don't have anything. But in fact, most of my friends didn't have most of these cool toys and computers and shit. They were not in here with their light boxes.
No. But they were, because the one that this little girl had, it made noises. It was and it had the sound. And I was just like, that's too much for me. I don't like that shit at all. Yeah, you need a nightlight, but why don't you just be like the rest of us and get one that plugs into the wall and it's kind of orange? You don't need a whole ass box that moves horses around the room.
Right?
Fucking psychos.
Little privileged bastard.
Why I'm not a parent. Reason 100,000 why I'm not a parent. Fuck your night light. I don't want to see ghosts.
No, I think horror movies are definitely part of the reason I also don't do kids, though. They're never right in the horror movies. It's always creepy little bastards talking to ghosts or running out of the corn. And I don't have time for it. I don't want that energy. And so
I don't want that life.
I've read too many creepy Reddit threads too at people's kids seeing like, oh, that's the headless guy in the corner. I'm like, look, I don't even care if what the kid is seeing. I would know. I would leave. I would just be like, no more. We're
Tapping
moving.
out of that.
Bye.
Listen.
Like tapping out of that.
Listen, again, had I been Maggie and two of the three of us were seeing dead people, I would have to have that moment of either the two of you need this house by yourselves, or we're all leaving.
I gotta jump it all in on this shit, or we have to move immediately.
Yeah, pick up a shovel or leave. Those are the options.
So do we want to wrap this up and give Stir of Echoes a rating out of 5?
Sounds good to me.
All right, Terry, how many fake walls out of 5 do you give Stir of Echoes?
Oh boy. Okay. I think this movie has held up really well. I remember when I first saw it, I was really pulled in by the kind of ghost aspect of it and the spookiness. Like, I think some of the jump scares still kind of work. Watching this was kind of weird though, because I felt deja vu, whereas like I was watching it and I when I went in, I had, like you, Mary Beth, no recollection of what this movie was about, other than it had Kevin Bacon and there was ghosts. And as I was watching it, like 2 or 3 scenes before something happened, be like, oh, I think this is going to happen, or I think this is going to happen. And then it did. And it was a very weird experience. Like the Matrix was glitching around me or something. But I think it's held up really well. I think that the things that it is discussing are very interesting and very, unfortunately, still pertinent to today. I think it's well directed. I think it's probably one of David Coep's better films as a director. I think for me, this is probably, I'm knocking half of those walls down and I'm giving it 3.5
Cool.
basement broken, hidden, fake basement walls out of 5 for me personally. What about you, Mary Beth?
Pretty much the same. 3.5 hidden walls. I think this was way better than I remember it being, and I can kind of now better understand why it scared my mom. I still don't think it's that scary, but I think because she didn't watch a lot of horror movies and she had kids, I think I understood more of why it freaked her out so much. And I think I appreciated just like, despite it being a little predictable, it was still entertaining and had some genuinely creepy moments. And I think it was trying to say something interesting about like the treatment of women in horror, like in life and in horror movies. I don't think it was totally successful, but I did appreciate trying to like contribute a little bit to that dialogue. So 3.5 for me. Sharai, you have the final word. How many fake walls?
I was dancing between 3.5 and 4 fake walls.
Cool.
I think it's definitely
3.75.
right. I think it's definitely getting that like bump just because of like my own baggage and the fact that it made me sit around going, "What if ghosts are real? What if they're talking to me right now?" And not so much for like what is on the screen. Yeah.
And honestly, like for me, kind of going along the same thing, I probably could bump it up a 0.5 star just because of it introducing me to Richard Matheson and like discovering a wealth of books from him. So maybe I'll bump mine up.
And shirtless
too
Kevin
because of that.
Bacon.
I mean,
and Ileana Douglas being even slightly more queer coded than she has been her entire career to this point, because we've actually put a woman on the couch. So like,
I know, I loved her in To Die For. And she felt like she was playing a similar character in this movie where like her lines, she had some fantastic lines. She's like, well, your beer-addled sperm still works. And then her comment that she's like, I'm not shocked there's another woman. Of course, the fact she's dead gives one pause. I was like,
when
you are a queer icon.
When she tries to hypnotize him while she's fucked up, I did not understand that mode as a kid. I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you do that as a kid? As an adult, I'm like, sometimes you're fucked up or things are happening and you have to just go with it. And I respect this and I love this scene more as an adult.
But you're like, yep, I get it. Now I get why you're absolutely like blaze out of your mind. You're like, all right, let's just go.
Right?
I've been there before.
Listen.
Well, thank you so much, Sharai, for joining us to talk about Stir of Echoes. Where can our listeners find you, and what do you have coming up that you would like to share?
You can find my personal shenanigans on Twitter at MISSSHARA. That's Miss Sharai. My name is weird, so you'll want to read that and not try and listen to that. But you can find me there on Instagram and Twitter with that handle. And for my podcast, where I do this with more beverages usually, that's a Nightmare Fierce on Twitter and a Nightmare on Fierce Street on everything else.
And check our show notes, everybody. We'll have all of those links in there.
And so, listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with Stir of Echoes? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please give us a rating and a review if you are on iTunes, and make sure you are subscribed.
Please.
It helps.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Somebody please think of the children! Somebody please think of the children! Somebody please think of the children!
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is the briefing room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.